Hello. Hey, today I want to show you our indoor plant nursery. We've got this set up down in our basement here, and this is the spot we keep all of our tropical plants during the winter. There's not much light. We're living up in the northwestern corner of the United States, and in the wintertime it's pretty gray and there's not a lot of light. And so we set up this indoor plant nursery to take care of our tropical plants during the winter, keep them in good shape. Most of these plants, many of them at least, go outside during the summertime, and that's great. And they get a lot of fresh air down there, but they can't really survive outside. It's too cold, and upstairs in our house, there's just not enough windows, and it's just too dark. So we set this up with some LED lighting. So that's kind of the background of what you're seeing here. But today I wanted to specifically talk more about what we found with our experiments. Two things: using a substance called LECA, and it's an acronym spelled LECA. It's these little beads here. Stands for lightweight expanded clay aggregate. And so that's the first thing I was going to talk about, was LECA. And the second was the use of wicks to water our plants. As you can see, there's like a rope coming out of the bottom of this pot. That is the wick that supplies moisture to this plant here. So going back to LECA, we started experimenting with LECA last spring, I guess. We were having a lot of problem with fungus gnats. So this area down here would become just infested with them. We found out that the LECA doesn't support the growth of bugs like that. So we started transitioning over and experimenting with this stuff, and it's been pretty positive. There's almost zero fungus gnats. There is still some plants in soil here, but generally the fungus gnats are gone. So that's been good. But beyond that, we've had fun experimenting with LECA. We've got a lot of plants transitioned into it. I can't actually tell you the name of all these plants, but here's one that seems to be thriving. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the whole role of these wicks. You can see the wick coming out the bottom there, and the reservoirs and the growing medium. So in this case here, we have a reservoir of nutrient solution down there, and we have these clear plastic, I'll call them like a net pot. It's got little slots in it and holes, and the wick comes down into the water there and soaks up, and the LECA absorbs it. And you can see the LECA is fairly damp in there. There's humidity, so the plant seems to really like it. So you can control the moisture level in the growing medium, whether it's dirt or LECA, by the size and the number of wicks that you have. You have to experiment with that. If you find that it's getting too wet inside, you may have to either trim one of these wicks off or simply fold it up out of the way so it's not hanging in the water. I've done it both ways. Maybe sometimes in the winter, if you want it a little drier, you take the wick and you fold it up out of the way. And in the summer, when you need more water, you can let it go down into the water and supply extra water to the plant. So there's a little bit of control there with the orientation of the wick, how many you have, whether they're all in the water or not. So there's a lot that can be done to control the moisture level. Because this inner pot is enclosed entirely in the outer pot, the humidity stays pretty high in there, which this plant seems to like. So it's doing really well. Here right next door is a jade plant growing in LECA. And jades, of course, don't want to be wet. They want to be on the dry side. So there's a wick. The roots are growing out the bottom of the pot like they usually do when you're growing this way. But I'm using a clay pot so that it'll breathe a little bit better and the moisture will escape. And also, my reservoir is set up so that the clay pot isn't entirely enclosed within the ceramic here. So the clay can breathe, and yet it's still getting the water from the wick. And it seems to be doing okay. So again, I can control the amount of moisture that this gets by the number and size of the wick. So we have one wick here of a smaller size, and that seems to keep it at a pretty good moisture level. Here's a lime tree, and citrus trees don't like to be wet, soggy. So again, we've got a clay pot so that the pot can kind of dry out naturally. I've got 2 wicks going into this pot, and it's sitting on a reservoir. And we typically don't water it much from the top. Maybe once in a while we do, but it almost always just absorbs moisture from the bottom. So with the clay and the fact that the pot is entirely exposed to air, the moisture level doesn't get too excessive inside in the soil. So this plant has always thrived since we started watering it this way with the wicks. Likewise, this tree over here, this is a rose apple. We grew it from a seed just for fun. It turned into a little tree. Kind of hated to see it die in the wintertime with the frost, so we brought it inside, not really expecting it to survive. But last year it survived just fine. So went back outside in the spring, lived all summer outdoors, and here it's back inside again. So it seems to make actually a pretty good house plant. So it's called a rose apple. Again, watered it with a wick. Water it from the top from time to time. This has a plastic pot, so it's going to stay more wet inside. The water roots will grow out all over the winter. These water roots dried up and broke off when it went outside in the summertime. So I expect they'll grow back because they were quite long last winter. Like I said, there's 2 wicks in here for the size of the pot and the amount of moisture this tree requires. So it'll draw up this tray full of water in about a week, I think. There's some starts of lemongrass. It's also got a wick just kind of perched there. There's a jasmine plant, also wick watered. And here's a little fig tree, started life as a bonsai. It's gotten a little bit big. It also has a wick. It's got a clay pot. This is actually like an orchid pot, has a couple of holes in it. But here's what you can typically see for water roots, what will happen with trees and things. The original wick is almost entirely covered in roots. It's right there. And then all these other roots have come out of the bottom of the pot, water roots. And they've just coiled themselves up down in there in that bucket of water. So plant seems to be thriving. It's happy. But that happens pretty much with all the plants where you start wick watering over a reservoir. The plant will eventually grow those water roots down into the reservoir. Here's a bird's nest fern. We're kind of experimenting with the amount of wicking. It's got a wick where both ends are up in the dirt. You can see the upper end of the rope right there. The loop hangs down in the water. It's got a plastic pot. So we're kind of monitoring the water levels. It seems to be okay. Again, you just experiment with the amount of wick and the amount of enclosure of the pot to see what type of moisture levels the plant likes. This is also a jasmine. It's just some cuttings. Here you can see there was 2 wicks in this one, a green one and a white one there. And again, all your water roots have now come out of the pot and are getting down in the water. So it seems to be happy. Down here we have our Hoya collection. Almost all of them doing pretty well. The ones that seem to thrive the best so far have been these Australis, Hoya Australis. And they just go crazy. And they're all growing in LECA. Let's see if I can pull this one out. It's not easy to do. It's heavy. There it is. There's your water roots. There's quite a few. You can see the wick over there, that rope back there behind. Lots of water roots. So there's 1 wick in this one. Net pot's about maybe 8 inches in diameter. It's, of course, down in this outer pot, which holds the nutrient solution. So the humidity is high inside the LECA. But so Hoya australis seems to really thrive. This one, I'm not sure, my wife could tell you what the type of Hoya it is. Here's a tag. Wicks. It's growing in the original soil that it came in, and all we did was we added a wick, 2 wicks in this case. We've got a couple of ropes. I made a little suspended water reservoir out of a pill bottle, and we just fill that up occasionally, and it keeps the soil at an even moisture level, so we don't have to water it or worry about it drying out. We've got a couple of flops. We had this is a Hoya lacunosa that we got in the mail, and it had root rot when it arrived. And so we took the cuttings and we rooted them, I think in soil the first time. It seemed to grow pretty well. Didn't do great, but it did all right. But then we had those fungus gnats started showing up. So we went to LECA. All was well for a while. The roots grew. Then we started playing around with the nutrient solution, and we tried some additives that, looking back, we probably shouldn't have. And I think we kind of poisoned the roots of this one. So we're restarting it. Roots are still alive, just they kind of atrophied down there. So, you know, you don't always have success. You got a few failures occasionally, but generally I'd say pretty well. Here's a pothos type plant. So I can pull this one out. There you go. All those crazy water roots have come out. So that's pretty typical. Seems to be happy. So there you go. So LECA, we like it. We found a couple plants that didn't seem to like it. There's always going to be those exceptions. Most of the plants we've tried have done pretty well. And yeah, we're very happy. No bugs. And the watering is easy. We have plant sitters come, or people that house sit for us when we're on vacation, and we tell them, hey, it's simple. Put some water in the reservoir. Just keep the reservoirs topped up with water, and you don't have to really worry much about, you know, if you're overwatering or underwatering something, because they basically water themselves. So that's also very nice when you've got a lot of plants and you like to go on long vacations. It's kind of nice to make it really simple for the kind person who's going to come in and take care of all your plants while you're gone. So again, the wick system works well. You have to adjust it to suit the needs of the plant, the type of pot you use, the amount of wicks you use, and that kind of thing. So all good. We're really happy with it. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.